Good evening. And as you can see, I have my clipboard. So we're going to get down to some really honky dory stuff. So I'm going to, I'll kind of like name off all the stuff that I want to go into. And then what I'm going to find will blow your mind. Now, it's not going to, you know, eviscerate the wall between subjectivity and objectivity, you know, and it's not going to give you, you know, transcendental wisdom or anything like that. It's a lot of these videos that I'm making, except for like two or three of them, deal with what's going on right now in our milieu. And the milieu is our man-made environment instead of just plainly saying environment. It's kind of like the world that we made for ourselves, more or less. And like I sometimes don't have to look up everything. I kind of know off the top of my head. Sometimes I make mild errors, and I try to fix up any major errors. So basically, that's what we, are dealing with is our situation, our environment, and in another video, well, maybe this one I might mention zeitgeist, which is not on this list, but I'll tell you right now, the zeitgeist that we are living in is one of it's violence, and it's of war, and the power grab, and of greed and stuff like that. It, I think it's somehow comparable to when we are approaching like what we had in Europe, approaching the World War I and World War II times, and I that's why I don't know why I got this bug up my butt to make these videos. And these are very like old school, or you can call it lazy school if you want. And I like doing stuff like this. I put stuff like this, and I'll take my phone and show you. And I don't know, like, so the way I do stuff is I kind of imagine if somebody else did it. And like I'm just a strange person. Like I like stuff like this. And like for example, I mean I get into like Beyond Vaudeville, you know, and look up that, Frank Hope and David Green and their whacked out guests. I like stuff like that. I was like from public television back a while ago. And then people now they're all old and stuff like so, but I don't know. I like, that kind of old school thing. I'll probably make, videos where I'm going to share me and the screen simultaneously. But the problem is, like, I'm really supposed to be working on other things. Like, I'm a visual artist. More or less, I'm basically a professional visual artist, and that still takes time. And I'm also doing other things, and I do work for a living, and I only got like 10 or 14 people watching my stuff. So I mean, I appreciate everybody who watches my videos, but if you think about it, it's a lot of work, and I'm a one man band. I have nobody support me on any of this stuff. I do this stuff, and I'm always making stuff. I'm always creating. If I'm not making something or creating something, I think I go crazy. And I think, by the looks of, like some of you are probably thinking, yeah, this guy is pretty much crazy anyway. So, anyways, this will be a whopper of a video. It might be the longest one, and I hope I'll be able to upload it on YouTube because it's going to be so dang long, and I'm using like a dated equipment. Anyways, so here are the things that I want to get into, and so I'll just rattle off the topics. I want to get into isomorphs, and the order. I realize that the order is like I toss it up in the air and let the list fall where it may as to like what will go first. And what's going to be mind blowing is how I'm going to pull it all together to make a point. And so the first one is isomorphs, and it goes into and then system theory, and then how nature takes the path of least resistance, and cybernetics, which is a subset of system theory, by the way, if you're curious. Entropy. And then I want to get into the reasons why we can't get like a lot of affordable things right now. I'm talking about like right now, and why stuff seems to break down, more than what I think it ought to. Uh, I should have put planned obsolescence, but it will. I'll get that. That's one of the things that will pop up, you know, as to why stuff don't last. So I should have probably mentioned planned obsolescence. So that's in there. Uh, and so what's the deal with George McGovern? What if he became the president? And I'll quickly explain who he is for some of you who don't know who that is. Remember, I come with a little bit of history. Larry Agran, what happened? What would have happened if he became president? And Gary Hart, what would have happened if he became president? And I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm going to pull all this together to discuss why I think Donald Trump, and this will blow your mind, I think Donald Trump's going to get a third term. If he don't die, if he's, capable of at least fooling the right amount of people, I think he's going to get a third term, and I hope I'm wrong, So let's get into it. So basically, isomorphs. An example would be if you take like math. This is a very simple example. Have like this the sequence of numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So like what I'm going to do is probably make some little pictures and stuff. So this is my new addition to my technology. So it's like isomorphs. So like like 2, 3, 4. So can you see that? So it's like that's these are isomorphs. They're this is 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes like a sequence like that. One follows the other. This is A, B, C, D, letters, numbers, letters. They're different, but they're the same. Does that kind of make sense? And then like with nature, an example of with nature is, I'll just make it simple for all of us. So like what does that look like to us? What does that look like to you? Couldn't that be like trees? And then could that be like your veins and your arteries, or like what's inside your lungs, all the bronchial tube type stuff? So those are in math and in nature, that's what isomorph is. And so this is the kind of thing that is interesting, and we can play on this a little later to get into a deeper question. Do you know, like there's this question that extremely intelligent people out there, they've been thinking about this for a while now, like whether or not um, nature uses math, and that's why we have our reality, or whether we made up the math to describe um, these patterns that are in nature. And so, and I mentioned that, like, okay, Pythagoras. Pythagoras is like everything is numbers, man. It all boils down to numbers. And what's really weird about that is Aleister Crowley said the same thing. Well, probably because he was from Oxford and he was intelligent. He read books and stuff like that. But I think it's more than just that. And like people like Neil Tyson deGrasse, he plays with this. Like it's kind of like what it's like kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. But that's for another discussion. That's for another video. So isomorphs. So that's kind of like what that is. And I don't know if it's the same as like nature repeats itself and stuff like that. So, but I just threw that in there too. Now, next one is systems theory, and there's a lot to unpack there. And it's not just one person who came up with it; it's a bunch of people. And if I wanted to make this like an educational video, I'd have to, write down the names, get into the names, and how, these individuals helped other individuals to perfect the idea of system theory. But what is it? It's basically it can be a group of parts of something that they interact to create a bigger thing. And I think that you're an example of system theory, and so am I. So basically, you have like, let's look at a car. Cars, a car is a system, and I think this is why I like system theory, because it looks at everything as a system. Like a pond could be a system. A man or a bird is a system. A car is a system. I mean, how many mechanics are out there? You have all these different parts. Basically, people like me is like, yeah, you have the battery, you have the wheels, you have the axle, and the engine, and parts of the engine, and then, but you guys, all you got. How many parts is there to a car? Thousands, right? Thousands, and so they all, work together to create this system. There's a car, and then, stuff like that. I already, like, I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on each one of these each one of these categories. I do want to like give you a characteristic of like, how systems work. They could change and organize. You know, and like, you can look at like the forest as a system. You have trees, animals, fungi. And I don't know, like, soil and weather. Weather is a part of the system. So, and if one part, and this is an idea about how it works. If one or two parts change, the whole system will change. So I don't know, like basically, it really helps you get out of the quagmire of, I think, Orthodox religion, because they make you like, they put you in a box. Actually, they make you the box. And like the way I look at it, it's more like this. Like that's you, and that's your parents, and that's your grandparents, and that's your, that's like, the history where they come from, and on and on. And so it's almost like, and then you could take that and change the names of these things. You could also say like that's your physical body, and then, that's like the microbes in your body that are not human DNA microbes in your body, and how that merges into like the environment. And so like, where do you stop? Where do you start? And where do you stop, and where does the environment start? If you've got microbes in your body that, like if you got rid of the microbes in your body that I'm talking about, like in your gut and that, chances are you can die. So like, and that's a part of systems theory. So you're changing a part of something, and then it affects the whole thing. And it can be inverted. You change your environment, it's too hot. What does that do to all these other little, hoops that leads to you? You get a chain reaction. So that's why systems theory is very important. So you look at like how things are not just things; they're relationships. And like, you get like a, like a, you take a tree, and then you throw that in the forest, and so that's a system. you know and it's like you can't like have any forest without the trees. And it's like a person is an organism, and so that's a system. uh Society is a system, you know and so society, you got like people, ideas, technology, institutions, and that. And back to the tree, you take like a tree, a single tree. That's not just a single tree. Like those trees, they connect underground, and they communicate. Like, so one tree, if it's experiencing some kind of tree trauma, it will send out communication signals to the rest of the trees around it. And I know I'm right about this. I just don't have the same type of knowledge or and terminology that somebody who studies trees. You know what I'm saying? I kind of have an overview idea about how this works. So that's why, like with system theory, it asks, you're thinking about how how parts influence each other, and when when you know all these parts, you put it into some kind of a you know um, I don't know, algorithm or computer, and you can pop out like scenario. You can make models of these systems, and you can pop out like question answers to questions like what different kinds of behavioral emerge via their interactions if you tweak one or two parts of the system. So like as we move on, just you can go back and like recall what the heck we're talking about, because we're going to see how all this comes together to you know to a head. I want to now get into nature. It's like here the third thing is like nature, how nature follows the path of least resistance, and basically the reason why is to conserve energy. So like so things in nature will move, change, they'll organize themselves, and the idea is why not try to use um, the least amount of energy or effort to do that. And so what's interesting is like, oh, well, then you're freaking lazy. Nature, you're lazy. And that's what's funny. That's why, like, I kind of, I didn't know anything about this when I was a teenager, but sometimes I was called lazy or something like that. I really, instinctively, I was just trying to, like, well, no, that thing that I'm asked to do is just so stupid. And I'm wasting my energy on that. I'd rather use that to create my art. Because, like I said, I was drawing since I was like 3 or 4. And it's really impractical way of looking at things because I'm not going to go there. This is not really about me. It's about a really there are bigger things that is happening that are bigger than me and you. And I kind of like that idea. It's like a Spider-Man quote, but hey, I'm a nerd. I'm just a nerd. Um, I like Tobey Maguire. Hey, so what? Uh, you know, Hello, Willem Dafoe. That's worth watching Spider-Man just because that guy was in there. You know, so like I don't know. Here's a simple one, like how rain comes down. It ain't gonna go up the mountain; it's gonna go down, and that kind of sounds lame, but it's true. Now, as it does that, though, it finds cracks and stuff like that, and it goes into the valleys and it goes into the low spots and stuff like that to flow downhill, and like that's how, and then you get your rivers and stuff like that. It's not gonna go like so, and because what it's doing is conserving energy as it's moving, and so, God, if nothing moved in nature, we wouldn't have any life. So that's kind of neat, to know that. Uh, Another example would be electricity. You got to have the medium through which electricity passes that creates the least resistance for the energy to go, the electricity to move through it. Copper wires are pretty good for that. I don't know. Like, I'm not an electrician. I'm just going to say that. Um, so like trees, they're not random. Like so when the roots are growing, they'll grow around rocks and towards water, because these paths will give the tree the best chance of its life, for survival. And this is with the least energy. So it really, these things are happening all around us in the natural world. And so like the branches, the way they spread out, it's not really random. It's to receive the sunlight more effectively, more efficiently, and stuff like that, right? All right, one more example. um, birds. Like birds, like they use air currents when they have to fly really vast, long distances, like so for like migration and stuff like that. So and let's have fun and plug this into like systems theory. So like you're gonna want to like all this stuff. Okay, anyways, so like it's kind of cool because with system theory, um, these systems will like self-organize, and so they'll do that to conserve energy. Like there's something about life and energy, and that just fascinates me. It's like life is about the conservation of energy, and like making new energy from the expenditure of old energy. And so like I don't know, like let's consider I don't know, like water will spread everywhere, and over time, it'll find the easiest routes, uh, and it carves deeper. Eventually, a stable river channel will form, so it creates its own path, and so basically, nature doesn't think and choose the easiest path. Physical laws causes systems to settle into arrangements where the energy is used most efficiently. And so that's like combining, that's connecting nature following the path of least resistance and systems theory. So to put this all together, like you think about how this idea connects strongly to systems theory, evolution, thermodynamics, which has been mentioned in other videos, and even like the question about isomorphisms, because the same pattern, finding efficient organization, appears in many different systems. Without getting too complicated, I want to discuss cybernetics. So basically, it starts out with a mathematician, I think Norbert Wiener, and it was like starting with math, and then from that you can get like these missiles that are like they guide themselves to their target. And I mentioned this in a previous video, so I don't want to repeat myself too muchly. But it's basically about how you use feedback loops, and so by using what are called feedback loops, it sort of like self regulates. And this is in like our machinery, and it helped us get to the computers, and it's in us living things and societies. And there are people like off the top of my head, Stafford Beer was a professor who used cybernetics to discover how to use cybernetics to make better companies, businesses, and a better way to govern, and because of the feedback loop. And so an example of it would be like if I don't know if I'm going to put my foot in my mouth, but like I mean I'll mention Jacques Fresco um, again. He called himself a cybernetic engineer, and he went and he talked about how like if you look at the way our world works with way how people do things, our governments and our businesses and our market economics works, it would if you took that system and made our body behave like that, we would atrophy and die. So he came up with an example about like harming a part of your body like your foot. And so the way we do things, he was saying like, yeah, if you harm your foot, the instead of the body just taking its abilities to heal the foot, with you have like your white blood cells to keep infection away, and the coagulation of the blood to clot it so that you don't bleed out, to death. And the way how like your skin will start healing and all these things. It takes like a lot of energy and a lot of effort for your body, and it has to be super organized, and stuff like that. And it uses that path of least resistance so it can maintain itself and create what's called a state of homeostasis, and all that stuff. Well, basically, it's kind of like this. So imagine your foot is hurt, and then you got like, these little people like themselves, like, okay, we have to vote for a Democrat. No, we got to vote for a Republican. Yeah, like if you take one, they cut the programs that don't make it accessible for these other guys here to work. You get the right wages so that they have the energy to go there and keep the germs from infecting the wound. The white blood cells. Now they're out picketing. Like, oh, we can't function like this. And then the agent for coagulating the blood. It's like, well, no, if you vote, so like, donate, give us donations. Or we need better wages too. So it's just like, and then you have like, well, we have to put laws into place. So you have to make it a bill, pass it, and make it a law. And you have like these things like in place to either help or hinder the blood to coagulate. But there's not enough spending available for that. Because um, you know, I want my fucking yacht, man. Whatever. I kind of like I lost some of you there. I got really opinionated there. But so what I'm saying is you know how like, it takes forever to get something done because like, our government shuts down. Okay, the government's shut down, and so, now what? And it's just like, man, you think that we'd have figured this out by now. And so I don't know if that was a good enough example. I think I'm wasting too much time. It's already 27 minutes. But so that's the idea, like, where, like, so with cybernetics, the body just does what it can in a very organized manner to, maintain itself. And, it's just passionate as to, like, the way it's going to do it. And there's no ideology, stopping it. Now with us, we have ideology, we have like cultural identification, and we have, pride and arrogance and ignorance and greed, and all these things are in the system, and also distractions like, instead of just making a better product, we have to make sure that we satisfy the stock shareholders. And then like the whole thing about equity firms. I made a video. One of my older videos compares private equity firms to viruses. Why don't you go and watch that? I mean, so you can see how all this connects. So there's that. So how I mentioned entropy in a previous video. So entropy is basically where like things, like that are in order, they spread off into disorder. Like, heat goes to cool and things spread out and dissipate. So if you have a concentrated area of heat in a room, that's going to spread out to the rest of the room. So like, so entropy says that systems naturally will drift to disorder. Now cybernetics says like feedback allows systems to maintain a stability. Then systems theory says the relationships between these parts create organized wholes. So, so let's look at it this way. So nature is always changing because energy tends to spread out, which is the idea of your entropy. But instead of everything becoming random immediately, patterns can form when energy flows through a system. These patterns create systems, and so these systems are important. So systems where different parts work together and influence each other. Cybernetics explains how these systems stay organized by using feedback, like a thermostat adjusting temperature or your body regulating itself. So, basically entropy creates the pressure for change, and systems create patterns, and cybernetics helps these patterns adjust and continue. So life is an example of this. It uses energy from the environment to maintain order for a while in a world that naturally moves towards disorder. And we got into that before, right? Okay, so now I'm really getting to using ChatGPT. So now I'm starting to ask it questions to get me an answer. I'm asking it to give me a short answer for the following question. Give me the reason why we can't get affordable things right now. And so it kind of spat out things like housing costs and corporate pricing and profit pressures. And so it's corporations basically, and capital owners, like, who own, that's what capital is, assets that you can invest in. That's basically what capital is. Um, and then so we have like wages just don't seem to keep up, and it's a financialization of the economy. And yeah, we have inflation, uh, and there's less competition. I kind of want to go into these. So housing costs. So housing is the biggest pressure for many people. Home prices and rents have risen because a limited supply in many areas. Okay, that's. I don't think that's true. I think that naturally that's not true. Okay, and I will get into that in another video. Um, we're not covering the entire surface of the planet, people, and so naturally there's a lot more than what we can imagine that is available for all of us. So the limited supply in many areas is because of investment buying and decades of underbuilding on purpose. And the reason why is because of, like Chris Hedges says, he talks about the illusion of scarcity, and other people like that have gotten into that topic. So that's that, and let's move on. So corporate pricing and profit pressures. So many large corporations are expected by investors to keep increasing profits and shareholder returns. So, like, some companies raise prices more than their costs. Some companies raised prices more than their costs increased during and after the pandemic, a phenomena often called greenflation by the critics. Others argue that the higher prices came mainly from supply problems, labor costs, and shortages. And so the thing is, I'm very opinionated, but I try to like rest my opinion on like some kind of foundation. And again, I think that like a lot of these problems are man-made. To go back to satisfying your capital owners and your stock shareholders, and I mean there are like companies, like corporations that are equity firms. It's not like, oh, I'm going to invest, I'm going to buy some shares of a given company. No, imagine a big corporation doing that, and that's private equity, meaning that it ain't public, meaning that you and I can't get that. People that like have like $100,000 a month to spend to see like I don't know, Donald Trump's ladybugs. Wages don't seem to keep up. Productivity increases greatly over the decade. So here's the thing that really should blow your mind. Do you know, like, before I got into this, I used to fall into like these quagmire arguments against people who, like, in my church, I would somehow like, chirp about like, wow, I don't like how things are going. Like kind of vague statements like that. Like I knew I was right, but I couldn't really, put it to the right words. And like so, like somebody always, like right wing Christians, like, oh, the economy is doing great, and our productivity is way better. Like I'll mention the '70s, like, oh man, that's just stupid. Our productivity is like, way more now than back then. And I used to like walk away like, wow, maybe I'm just stupid. But now I'm like, wait a minute, wait a cotton picking minute. If productivity has increased so much since like the '70s or '80s, why the frig are the workers' shares, or of the gains not you know rising as well? It's like trickle up, and that's why you take a CEO, and like in the '70s that CEO was like X number of times more, receiving more gains from the company than the median worker. Now that has multiplied like exponentially, like huge ass difference, and that's a fact. And I don't want to throw out numbers because I don't know them off the top of my head, But you could look at it. You can ask yourself, what's the difference between a CEO's paycheck and the median worker of a given company? What was the difference from like say the 70s to like today? And you're gonna get a really vast, report of a difference, So like my videos are gonna get you to think and you to do some research. And then put in the comments, man. You help me help me help you ad infinitum. Okay. Yeah. So productivity increased greatly over the decades, but workers' share of the gains has not risen at the same rate. Many jobs now provide less security, fewer benefits, and less purchasing power than similar jobs in the past. You see, that's what I was trying to say. And now I know what the frick I'm talking about. And so like my dad had a pension. Well, why are you giving these people pensions, man? Let them suffer, man. Let them eat cake, and they have to do like these stupid gig jobs. That's why, like when I was teaching at the colleges, it was really hard, if not impossible, at full time, unless I was a department chair. It's like who in the fuck wants to be a department chair and have to teach all these classes and also run the department? That's really running somebody to the ground, man. And I've seen it. I used to like be really respectful to my department chairs because I was like, man, I don't want your job. I'm an artist. I want to make art, you know? And like, if I was a musician, I'd be bugging you to be in my band if I heard that you could play the drums pretty good and I'm a songwriter, guy, I gotta be in a band and I want to go out and play, all over the place and maybe get a record out and, make a living doing that. I don't want to be cooped up in my cubicle just, playing music on my own. And unfortunately, as an artist, man, that's why I'm kind of like frustrated all the time because I can't be in a group, with a group of artists and we're going to make something. And, there's power in numbers, man. There's power in numbers. And so, but I'll probably paint and draw while, until I die. I'm gonna die with my boots on, AKA with a paintbrush or airbrush in my hand. That's that. Anyways, so that's okay. Financialization of the economy. Now, this started to increase. If you do your research, they started talking about it in the late 70s, and then it was enacted by the time Reagan became president. So you have key figures, like these are things you have to understand. So you write this down and you worship it and worship me. I'm sorry, I'm not going to cut that. So you research this and work it out for yourself. Okay, so think about the Powell memorandum. Powell memorandum. Powell memorandum. Trilateral commission. Trilateral commission. Look up those two things. Okay, this is off the top of my head. So about the financialization of our economy. So you think about those two things. Now, Reaganomics, trickle down economics. Okay. John Keynes versus Milton Friedman, not Milton Bradley, Milton Friedman. There's a contrast between these two economists. Look that up. And Margaret Thatcher. And look up deregulation of Wall Street. Deregulation of Wall Street. And look up privatization and the reduction of the government. Privatization and the reduction of government. And tie that in with Ronald Reagan. You'll see why we are in the current situation in this country because of all those factors. So please do that, do yourself a favor and look at it. So let's okay, financialization of the economy, more money flows into assets like housing, stocks, and private equity investments. Companies may prioritize cutting costs, outsourcing, buybacks, and maximizing shareholder value rather than lowering prices or increasing durability. So what's buyback? So that means that a company will buy its own stocks. And you know what's funny? The government will give these companies money. And instead of taking that money and then improving the workplace and like, hey, look, we can give our employees some more wages and stuff. No, they take that money and they buy back their own stocks. That's what buyback means. I want my baby, buybacks. I want my baby, buy. Give me my buybacks, baby. Gotta make light of this because otherwise I have an aneurysm. So, global supply chains and inflation. So let's look at the pandemic. Again, I this is where I start actually asking ChatGPT questions. So like global supply chains and inflation. The pandemic disrupted manufacturing and shipping. Remember the thing that we looked at, like who benefits from pandemics? And remember the thing about war? And at the end of the video, I got flustered and I said, look, just freaking answer me this. If nobody made money off this shit, would we have like any more wars? And the thing just said no. And that was the end of the inquiry, and the video, So global supply chains and inflation, so pandemic disrupted manufacturing and shipping, energy prices and food costs and materials increased. Some of those pressures eased, but many prices stayed high because prices usually don't fall back once companies and consumers adjust. That's the thing. Any companies that adjust to like higher prices for their product. But here's the thing, people. Stop adjusting. You're really not doing yourself any favor. You're always adjusting. You're always adjusting. You're always adjusting. You're always adjusting. And like people start, that's why you start adjusting and you start like, voting for the winning team, even though they are like Adolf Hitler. Or are they sounding like Adolf Hitler? Well, I better vote for him because I'm adjusting and I want to go against the grain right now, and it's like you're at your workplace and it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to ask people about what they're getting, although I'm a woman and he's a man. I'm not going to figure out, I'm not going to ask, since we both do the same job, our offices are right next to each other. I pray not ask him, what's your annual salary, you know, because you're not supposed to ask that. You're not supposed to talk about that. Well, I say you should, you know. You got to remember, people, we live in a society, in America, in this country right now, the economic model that we support, that we enable, like if we got rid of all of the illegals, it would go to a grinding halt. And American citizens that work like their jobs, a million of you would lose your job. But meanwhile, you're just adjusting. You're just trying to, save face. And I'm so sick and tired of it. I want somebody to say, you know what, man, this sucks. Let's talk about it over a cup of coffee. Everybody is like, oh, even people in my sector, I work with artists, and they're all like, left wingers, and it's like, why are you walking around like you're a part of a corporation? Let it all hang out, man. I'm more than wearing my Hunter S. Thompson shirt. Hey, man, what's going on, man? And it's like everyone's so professional all the time. It's like, look, when I'm in my studio, I'm a fucking professional. I'll show you more of my art. I'm a goddamn fucking professional. And I wake up in the middle of the night. Damn it, that doesn't look right. I'm 62 and I'm still doing this. I used to sleep in my studio when I was a student. And it's like, but like sometimes I just want to like let it hang loose and say, let's talk about, man, what's going on, I don't know. A lot of us, I'm the one who's talking about George McGovern, Larry Agran. Like, what if they became president? And they're like, "What the fuck are you even talking about?" Look, I'm an artist, aren't you? Like, you know what I'm saying? 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 Come on, you know what I'm saying. Anyways, oh, let's talk about this one. Less competition. Doesn't that go against the grain of what capitalism is all about? Fewer companies control larger shares of the market. When competition is weak, companies have more ability to raise the prices. The biggest problem is that the economy has become better at generating wealth and profits than at ensuring ordinary people's incomes and purchasing power keep up with the cost of living. So if you go to like California, like Livermore, California, in their fire department, there's something called the Centennial Light. Now, the Centennial Light was installed in 1901, and it's been burning almost continuously ever since. And so, why do I mention this? Because of the next topic on our list, planned obsolescence. And so, because I asked, like why why do we see things like breaking down more? Like, why can't we get stuff that lasts longer? Because I am 62, so it's kind of like, I see this, and so and so I asked, like, that's what I asked. And the immediate thing it said was, "Oh, you're talking about planned obsolescence or declining product durability." And it just went into like why, and it's okay. Profit incentives. I don't have to explain the paragraph underneath the word profit incentives. You know what that means? Lower manufacturing costs, cheaper materials, thinner parts, glued components instead of repairable screws. Think about this, people. Shareholder pressure. Think about that. And then the other was like complex technology. Yeah, I get that. Like things have to change more. Like, and I get that. It's not black and white, but there is a lot of black. All right. And then repair culture has changed. Many older products were designed with repair in mind. Today, repairs can be expensive because parts, tools, and manuals or software access may be restricted. And I know that there was a thing about that with like some of you computer people. It's like, I want to have computers that I can repair. And like, so Apple doesn't let you do that. So that's the thing about Apple. You can't do that. You have to go to them to fix it. Now imagine if that bled over to everything. And you know what? It is. It is. It is. Your newer cars, did you go there and fix it? You have an older car? An older car? You have an older car? I'm talking. I mean, when I was a teenager, I remember like John Denemy and that. They used to be like, the wife beater T-shirts, outside of it's literally he's wearing underwear outside his shirt. It's a tank top, and he had his blue jeans on, big thick black belt with the big fat 1970s, iron belt buckles. It's like that's my bell bottoms, and he's over like a grease monkey fixing his car because he could do it. And but like nobody's fixing their fucking cars now. You have to go to the shop to do it, and I have a friend who's a mechanic of mine, and a friend of mine who's a mechanic, and he says, Serge, to be honest with you, all these newer cars are garbage because they're always in my shop, even after like a couple, like 4 months, 5 months, they're actually in my shop. And you might have a new car where you're not having that problem, but no, this guy's been a mechanic since he was a kid. He breathes that stuff. And he's like, I'm asking him like, what car should I get? And he's telling me, like, don't get anything made after this year. And he'll give you a year, and you should try to get something that was made just a little bit before that. When all of this changes, I should ask him and then get back on here and say, this is the official report by this guy, and I trusted. And so, anyways, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Anyway, so the repair culture has changed, and there's something about consumer expectations. I'm sorry, I blame like a lot of the problems. You'll see that one of the things that the pattern is. I blame myself and you. That's why we are at where we are at. And I can even get into like a more like metaphysical or existential thing about that. And I'll point to you where I think that might be found immediately. I talked about how I was, identifying with Gnosticism, and go back and watch that. Anyways, but that's not what this is. I'm not trying to get metaphysical at all in here. Um, So the larger issue is a tension between two goals. An economy built around continuous consumption and an economy built around making things that last. But the thing is, it's more about consumption because we are the consumer, and it's about pleasing the shareholders, right? That's basically what all this is. Because if you can make something like a black box, and this black box is like, that's like, let's say that thing is like your light bulb, and like, wow, that thing is like, that I was referring to the engineer's black box. We don't know how it works, they make it. But like, okay, that's like the centennial light, man. Why can't we all? Okay, there it is. Forget that. Let's just give them a centennial light. So what if we all had lights that like lasted for like it doesn't have to last for 100 years, but let's say we had a light that lasts like at least like 20 years. No, can't have it. And this is where I get suspicious. If that's the case for that, how is it for other things that are like breaking down when they don't need to? And so come on, man, that's huge. So to put a cap on that, basically the reason why we're not getting affordable things, apart from like the consumer customer expectations, is, and the like some of the things are kind of you know very complex or whatever. It's the main elephants in the room are corporations and the capital owners. That's the main freaking problem right there. Okay, now we're gonna have some fun here. It's only 52 minutes. I might be able to make this not so much of a not so long of a video. I thought it would be a huge ass video, but maybe not. Long ass video. So, how many people know who George McGovern is? Okay, so like he ran against Nixon, and when Nixon was running again, and he lost. And so one of the things he was a Democrat. One of the things he was okay, like so I asked ChatGPT, and I will do it for your experience of it. I asked ChatGPT, what if he was president? And you know what it said? It would have said like the Vietnam War would have ended way sooner. That alone would be why the fuck you would vote for that guy. And think he didn't win. He didn't win, people. Remember, a whole list of, a whole slew of things, people and corporations and shareholders that benefit from war. You see why I think like this, and I get excited about it. It's like, So let's look at this. So I asked ChatGPT, like, what if George McGovern won the presidency? And so I'm gonna kind of like slow up here and really kind of unpack this. I'm not gonna, like he was the man who lost to Richard Nixon in 1972, and this was one of the biggest what ifs in modern U.S. politics. If McGovern had won, the United States would likely have taken a very different path, a hugely different path. And I go to the bookstore sometimes, and I go to the magazine section, and I say Time magazine, and they have like the what ifs, and they precariously, they very interestingly, did never ask the question, what if George McGovern won? They never do. Well, we're gonna find out like what happens if he did. So like the reason why I even started getting into this stuff is because of Hunter S. Thompson. So and I'm gonna do this more like show and tell. I read this book by him, and it was exciting. It was great. So he got me into politics, So it's called Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail of 1972. So we learned in 1972 that George McGovern lost, and so I'll show you some pictures. This is kind of like how I always wanted to teach too. It's like I like to do. It's like so. I don't want to waste time, so I'm going to pause this and find the picture. So this is Hunter S. Thompson. So he traveled on the campaign trail with the George McGovern team, and he wrote this about it. And in this book, like he gets really into it. He even like on another occasion he was talking to Richard Nixon. He was able to get into the limousine, and they're in back talking, and so he was so clever because like he knew that Richard Nixon was a football player. college football player, and he loved football. So Hunter S. Thompson was able to kind of like get the chance to talk to Nixon, who he despised immensely, about because because Hunter S. Thompson was a sports writer. He knew sports like football. So, but anyways, um, so there's George McGovern and another guy, Gary Hart, who I'm going to talk about in a minute too. I give you an idea about what Hunter S. Thompson felt. He said in in his book, he said that it is Nixon himself who represents that dark, venal, and incurably violent side of the American character that almost every other country in the world has learned to fear and despise. This is why I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm a strange person, but like I remember when I read this, I was in public and I was vocal when I was reading this, so it's a very famous line, and this is it. Richard Nixon has never been one of my favorite people anyway. For years, I've regarded his existence as a monument to all the rancid genes and broken chromosomes that corrupt the possibilities of the American dream. A foul caricature of himself, a man with no soul, no inner convictions, with the integrity of a hyena and the style of a poisoned toad. Egads, what would he write about or say about Donald Trump? So it's a good read. Well, let me put this down. All right, hold on. Yeah, I dropped my pen. So back to George McGovern, Vietnam War. This would probably have been the biggest immediate difference. The war would have ended a lot sooner. Okay, that's all you got to know. And I should have said, okay, we're done with George McGovern, but we'll continue. So like the war would have ended much sooner. And you know what? It reduced the death of so many freaking people. Need I go on? Need I go on about the Vietnam War and George McGovern? Okay, foreign policy. McGovern favored a less militarized foreign policy, more emphasis on diplomacy and human rights. Now think about that. And he lost. Who voted against him? You know, and there's a reason why. And his running mate was secretly seeing a psychological help because of he had a mental condition. Something about him wasn't. I forgot the details, but like I seen a counselor. And chances are some of you have seen a counselor. You saw not psychological like help, or like I didn't see a psychiatrist. I saw a counselor, and so this guy saw a shrink, his running mate, and it was kind of like it showed that McGovern was an idiot, and so he lost because of that. But that's not why he lost. All right, I don't care whatever anybody thinks. That's not why he lost. Um, so, um, so foreign policy, he probably would have reduced some defense spend. I mean, why? Okay, look, okay, Mr. McGovern, pick another running mate, and we'll continue with this thing. No, they just like, you know. Anyways, um, economy. McGovern proposed policies such as a guaranteed minimum income, stronger social programs, and more support for working class Americans. Now, if it's not one of the primary issues, I'm out. And it's not the primary issue. Like when I was a teenager, I kind of thought it was, and I wasn't political then. But I mean, I wasn't my completely head in the sand. I kind of like it. Just kind of looked, it's like what I saw on TV, what I heard on the radio, and then what it looked like. At least they were trying to make us happy, so that we would want to go to work. You know, and it just seemed, more wives did stay home, all over our neighborhood. And it just seemed like, yeah, that's how it should be. But boy, and that's why I say go back in time and compare it to now. That's a different America, people. Uh, and so the critics said was like, oh, he would spend taxes, he would spend money, he would spend money, he would spend money, you know. And they say, oh, he would tax you, he would tax you. Yeah, he would tax the big corporations, you know. It's so that's that thing about that. Okay, Supreme Court. I don't know what this one's about. Should I read it? Okay. A McGovern presidency would likely have produced a very different Supreme Court appointment or appointments. This could have changed later decisions on issues like labor, campaign finance, civil rights, corporate regulation, and social issues. So I'm going to take a stab at that the corporate regulation. You know, does that mean that he would decrease or increase corporate regulation? Yes, it would be the latter. Increase it. Okay, so Watergate. If McGovern had won, the Watergate scandal probably would not have unfolded the same way because Nixon would not have been president. So that's fun. The broader issues of political corruption and campaign practices might still have existed, but the specific scandal likely would not have happened. Well, duh, because Nixon wasn't there to break into the Democratic headquarters, which was at that particular hotel of the same name, Watergate. All right, it's good to know this stuff. There was a time I didn't know any of this. Long-term political direction. A McGovern victory might have weakened the rise of the conservative movement that came later with Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Remember those terms I asked you to look up? And then get back here with me. Okay, there might have been less emphasis on deregulation. Remember cutting the referee? You cut out the referee in this sports game, and now you're getting hit below the belt. The little guy is. Okay, and reduce government involvement in the economy, which is what the Apollo memorandum was calling for, and the Trilateral Commission. They both were asking for that to happen. But look it up yourself and get the details for yourself. For your own personal edification, I advise you to do so. And I will mention, that there was inflation and like we had the energy crisis because of Iran. I think so Jimmy Carter was blamed for that because Iran can just close its legs like a woman. It does that. So what does that mean? No more oil comes out of her. The Strait of Hormuz. And so we can't get oil from there because we're having problems with Iran. But Jimmy Carter didn't start any of that. He was thrown in the lion's pit, the lion's den, because of what we did to Iran back in the 1950s. Thank you very much. I made a video about that. If I start talking about that in particular, about Mossadegh and all that, then now I'm going to spend like 15 minutes on that. I just won't do it. Nope, I won't do it. I mean, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. No, because this will be like another 2 hours. Okay, so yeah, inflation, energy crisis, and so we had problems. We had some problems because of that, the whole oil thing with Iran. Anyways, so the biggest alternate history question is whether McGovern would have created a more egalitarian economy. All right, it's more like this as opposed to this. Tim Carey, right? Okay, like this, right? Okay. And here's a question. We're like 30,000 years ago, did we live in a society like this or like this? No, it was like this. No centralization of anything really. Which, okay, here's the thing. If you have no centralized, government, no centralized, and that sounds like okay, I don't want to get into that. Let's just say no centralized institutions and no pyramid type of hierarchical type of society, which started sometime somewhere in the Middle East, um, you know, a few thousand years ago, beginning with like the Proto-Sumerians and these other people like that, and the Sumerians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, not in that order, but the Sumerians were one of the earlier, like Mesopotamian type, things going on there. That's where like we get our like modernization of it. It starts there, and I think China independently was doing something similar, and I don't want to exclude that. And also independently, a little bit later, you have like the Aztec, Incans, and the Mayans, but they came later than what happened in the Middle East. I think I am right about that. So let's just proceed. So egalitarian economy. The Native American Indians were living what in a hierarchical system or a more egalitarian agrarian type? I think it's the egalitarian agrarian. Okay, economy, or whether the economic crisis of the 70s would have produced a backlash anyway. Okay, all that stuff with Carter and all that, we would have been better off if we didn't go the way we went. We would have had to backtrack and like, suck it up, Buttercup. But we would have, made a better system without this, deregulation of the government, and you shift the control there of the referee to the private investors and these corporations and Wall Street, and so that's why your healthcare sucks. Okay, all right. His victory could have shifted the U.S. political center of gravity significantly to the left, and stuff like that, and like that's the kind of leftist I am. Like, yeah, because I still have a soft spot for people like George McGovern. So, anyways, that's that. Let's cut this short. So, like Gary Hart, one thing about him is that, like, yeah, it would have been a lot better if he was president. But like, there's a reason why he didn't even cut it close, is because of something involving he was on this boat called the Monkey Business. It was called Monkey Business. It was out in the Bahamas over there, and so rumors was he was having an extramarital affair with a model, and there were indeed photographs of him and her with her on his lap, and so that just he withdrew from the race after that, and there is a conspiracy that it was all set. It was a setup, you know. And Hunter S. Thompson even gets into it in his book. That's why I learned all this stuff. I read his book, and I learned about these people. It was like, wow. And so I have to dig deeper, because Donald Trump was our president when this started happening. Me getting into this when his first term, when he first became president. So if Gary Hart became president, the most likely alternate history is that the United States would have taken a somewhat different path in the 80s and the 90s. It would have been a McGovern. So, like, ChatGPT calls McGovern presidency a revolution. It would have been a fucking revolution. And the best example, it would have been like a small version of John F. Kennedy presidency. Because John F. Kennedy was going to be, he was taking us down the primrose path of a bright future. Although he had some problems. At first, he was all about that domino theory against communism and all that, but he softened up on that. He didn't want to fund Israel anymore. He wanted to, like, deregulate shit, I'm pretty sure. And he was interesting in I'm in downsizing, like the CIA and like a lot of stuff, and I don't know. So anyways, there's so much to Oliver Stone did a really good special on the assassination of JFK, and it's worth looking into. I don't know if I'll even get into that. I think it was an inside job, and so, but like, anyways, okay, not a revolution like McGovern, but a shift towards technocratic reform, military restructuring, and investment in technology and education. So almost sounds like shit, man. Wouldn't some big wigs like that? So this was back then. So Hart was a former advisor for McGovern, but by the 1980s, he was trying to create a different kind of Democratic Party, less tied to a New Old Deal, less tied to the old New Deal coalition, but also less aligned with Reagan-style conservatism. His theme was new ideas, focusing on economic modernization, education, military reform. Okay, blah blah blah. So let's look at the end of the Cold War for him. Okay, so Hart was not an isolationist. He supported a strong defense, but argued that the U.S. needed to rethink military priorities and reduce reliance on nuclear weapons. If he became the president in '89, he might have pushed harder for military restructuring as the Soviet Union collapsed. He likely would have redirected some defense money into domestic programs. Right there, oh, that's a no-no. You can't have that. And so blah 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 blah. And so more investigation and more investment in education and technology. Hart talked about a strategic investment initiative using government policy to strengthen America's economy, education system, and technological competitiveness. A Hart presidency might have invested earlier in high-speed internet infrastructure, which, like, I don't hate the internet. I mean, I'm using it, right, to talk to you blokes. So, we have that. Expanded job training, which that costs a lot of money, but on jobs, they just threw me right in, and I had to fucking figure it out within a day. And I have anxiety. I had anxiety growing up. It's like, shit, man, I'm an artist, and I have to do all these jobs that have nothing to do with art, which is why I got my master's so I can teach at the college level, only to find out you can't make a fucking living that way. Unlike my professors, when I was a student, they weren't gigging other jobs. They were able to create their art and teach, and they put time in, like, all of this. I don't want to make this about me. I'm not whining, I don't want your sympathy or anything. I'm just, because I am like in it. I'm almost like a gonzo guy here because Hunter S. Thompson would throw himself in the story. And so it's funny because it's the reason why I fell in love with it, because that's how I've always talked to people. The way I would tell you about something is how I'm right in the middle of it, and how I saw it, and how me interacting with it will help you understand the situation I'm trying to explain. I just did it instinctively, not comparing myself to his brilliance, but I'm just saying, okay, which is like, people hate that. Like Hunter S. Thompson's, fuck that. Don't talk like that about me. You're a quirky guy. I wouldn't hang out with you if I didn't seem to find anything unique about you. So like, fuck that. Although I do think he was a great fucking writer, man. But anyways, okay. Job training, and I always thought that was really important. Like, you help people adjust from this part of their life into a bigger, scenario. And like, you should really, like, vocation schooling and all these things, and school should prepare you for the real world, which is what a lot of Republican people would say. But I'm thinking about it in a different way. It's to prepare you for a better EQ and not just an IQ. Like, you have your emotional, quotient. Like, you have to know how to communicate and how to just deal with other people and shit, and also about the thing that you're going to do. But the jobs would be totally different. I think there's like a lot of bullshit jobs that I want to do a video on that. Like, a lot of jobs are bullshit. And so, but I'm not going to talk about that now because, again, we're already into an hour. So like, he wanted to get into more science. And so the thing about science is, you got to understand, as science, like, really expanded in Europe, Christianity, contracted. Because now you're asking amoral questions about the nature of things, where before you were tethered to, like, it has to be according to a scriptural account of the way of things. Then you could explore other things that are not directly related to the Bible. And that really put, like, yourself, like, in handcuffs. Like, you really can't really, like, science talked about how, like, Galileo, the church hated Galileo for talking about how the earth moves. The earth moves. Like, the sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun. And they were gonna, torture him for that. So So science, and so that's one thing about Carl Sagan. To get into Carl Sagan, Cosmos, and he's before Neil Tyson deGrasse, who did the second installment of Cosmos. Carl Sagan's the first, and God, I remember when I was like as young as in elementary school, we were watching videos like an episode of Cosmos on there. That's why when I was a kid, I thought I'm not into math or anything, but I kind of I understood what Carl Sagan was saying, and I kind of thought, wow, man, I live in a good time, man, and I was watching Star Trek and like so. I don't know. I thought that we would have been way better off if like I was like like 14 thinking this, and we didn't go that way. We have a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of distracting toys, but how we treat each other, it's like the dark ages, man. It fucking sucks. And anyways, so his economic path was different than Clinton. So Bill Clinton's 1990s approach included deficit reduction, which he supposedly evened out, like he got rid of our debt. But he got into like these free trade agreements and financial deregulation. He's the guy. Clinton was the guy who got rid of the Bank Act of 1933. Look that up. Bank Act of 1933, and that's what helped get us out of the Great Depression. And and stuff like that. So Hart might have been somewhat different. More emphasis on industrial policy, more government investment, more skepticism towards uh, market solutions. So Clinton was a part of the whole idea about the market can create the solution to the problem. And that's called democratic centrist. Look that up. Now, so here's like your right wing things. Right wings, conservative people like Republicans, they want to downsize government. They want to do everything. So Donald Trump is realizing the wet dream of the Republicans that were alive when Reagan was president. He's doing everything that Reagan would have done if Reagan still was president. But the only difference is Reagan wouldn't have been such a dirty mouth. He wouldn't have been on the Epstein. He probably wouldn't have even been on the Epstein file in the Epstein files, like any more than Obama wasn't in the Epstein files. Meanwhile, Bubba was. All right, just saying. And I vote Democrat. Just saying. So, he was like, well, I want technology and all that, but we have to have the government be like a referee, and I think restructuralizing the military, that's just another way of saying, bring down the cost for the military. That's what all that is. So he didn't win. Get him out. um I don't know what he would do about healthcare, so I'm learning something in real time. Hart had supported expanding access to healthcare, but he wasn't like into the, I guess, but he was not associated with the same universal health care push as the other Democrats. A Hart presidency might have attempted reform, but whether it would have succeeded is uncertain. So it doesn't mean that he's all good, in my book. I want free health care, so I'm sorry. um so a President Hart would likely have appointed different justices than what Bush would and Bill Clinton would. Over decades, that would have changed rules on campaign finance, corporate power, environmental regulation, labor rights, and executive power. So that means basically is uh, like don't the whole thing about big money and campaign. He was probably against that, and he probably would want environmental regulation. And I think he was for like labor rights and all these kinds of things. So um, what's the biggest difference? I'm spending too much time on this guy, and I hate that I'm doing this. So Hart said that the future is about ideas, science, education, and reform. I kind of like that. Isn't that okay? I want a future about ideas, science, education, and reform. Now, like in a sentence, what would the Donald Trump party say? We know, like I'm going to say he would say that, like deregulate the Wall Street, downsize the government, with Doge, border, get rid of all the illegals, all the undocumented, get rid of them, and Iran must not have a nuclear weapon and stuff like that. And so, in one sentence, what would Donald Trump say he is campaigning for? What? This is what he wants to make happen. Hold on one second. Yeah, it says nothing different than what I said, So, I mean, would you want that? Like, oh, okay, so we heard what Gary Hart presidency would offer. Donald Trump says stricter immigration policies, confrontational approach towards institutions and allies, confrontational approach to our allies, and you know, challenging the structure of the government, and totally towards deregulation and nationalism. It's like, and you voted for that instead of like, a future for ideas, science, education, and stuff like that. It's like, anyways, I think we're done with Gary Hart. Since I sacrificed so much time on Gary Hart, which I shouldn't have, because he's the least influential of the three. And so the third one would be Larry Agran. So if Larry Agran is saying, okay, if Larry Agran became president, the United States would likely have taken a much more peace-oriented, environmental, and socially democratic direction, with a major emphasis on shifting government priorities away from military spending and towards domestic needs. Now, wouldn't that be great for the average American? Come on, man. That would have been Larry Agran would have been the shit for me. So, like one sentence to summarize him, an Agran presidency would likely have focused on reducing military spending, expanding social programs, investing in environmental protection in cities, and challenging the influence of corporate and defense interests in government, which is something that the Democrats should never change. They should actually just take from his playbook and say, we're all going to be like little Larry Agrans. We're all going to just, even though it sounds like a pie in the sky dream, like the military thing, because of the dreaded Iran cloud, it's like, well, fuck it. The whole world's going to know that this is what we're doing. And the reason why is if one country like America does it, it's just sort of like, wow, they really mean this, it could really change the fucking world. It takes only one person of one. It takes only one nation, a powerful nation like the United States, to change the direction of the whole fucking world. And so I'm showing you how come like none of these guys won. Gary Hart's the least influential of the three, but he fit in there, right? Good enough, right? And we can do this also with like Ross Perot, which I won't, and anyways. And there's like Ralph Nader, but then it gets to be it's going to take too long. Um, Ralph Nader is almost one I should look into. He goes right in there. He's close. Ralph Nader would be a lot like the Ralph Nader is the reason why you have stuff that's more safe to use. Like your car is more safe to drive because of Ralph Nader. In other words, you might have not had like the safety belts in your car, if it wasn't for someone like Ralph Nader. So just know that. Okay, so Agran was known for arguing that the end of the Cold War should bring a major peace dividend, moving money from defense towards housing, education, infrastructure, and healthcare. Totally for the environment, he would have pushed to climate and conservation policies earlier than uh, then they became mainstream. So the thing is, okay, now I made a video about the climate change. It's fucking real. Come on, man, it's real. Like we haven't had more an increase of hurricane activity. I'm sorry, we didn't have an increase of earthquake activity, but that's underground. I'm talking about above ground shit. That stuff's getting all fucked up, and like so things are really all mixed up, and like even like with me here, like I've been in Arizona since 1988, and the weather was considerably different then than it is now, and if you ask like right wing type people, even if they're fucking Native American and they voted for Trump, they're gonna be like, well, no, there's no difference to the monsoons. I go, look, man, I'm not gonna swear. Just staying like within the circumference of like just within the valley, the Arizona, like that valley, uh, like Maricopa County, whatever. Um, the monsoons here was night and fucking day. Now we barely get anything, you know. Then it was like in 88, 89, and 90. It was like hell. You couldn't see like, like 20 feet in front of you. So you better not drive. And I loved it. I go, this is why I'm in Arizona. Every summer it was like a treat. I fucking loved it, man. And this summer has been a little bit different. A little bit of more clouds, more rain, and more wind. And that's why I'm less tense than I was like the last 2 years. I was way more tense during the summer. I'm so grateful for this, man. It's like shit, man. This couple of degrees cooler and more wind and all that, and some more rain, man. It makes such a big difference, man. Economy. He favored stronger public investment and policies aimed at reducing inequality. So he would have pushed for campaign finance reform and reducing the influence of large donors and special interests. The problem is, look up Citizens United. Hillary Clinton's all in there, But okay, just fucking look at Citizens United. It's basically, the First Amendment right has been passed over to corporations too, where they can use money as a form of speech, and like, oh, it's my expression. Money is their form of expression, and they put that money, in the form of giant ass, campaign donations. But money should not be in politics, people. But it has expanded, and Elon Musk is one of the main reasons why Donald Trump became president. I mean, look at this. Elon Musk really pushed for a Donald Trump presidency. Okay, which is something that Larry Agran wouldn't have liked. Then Donald Trump creates Doge and throws Elon Musk in there to run it, and they cut a lot of programs. They fucked up, like the VA. I mean, look at man. If you're a veteran and you still support Trump, how in the fuck could you even live with yourself? Notice I haven't sworn. I haven't like flipped a bird. I'm trying to like refrain from that more. I don't want to. I don't know. Sometimes I will go all out. We shall see. Uh, all right. You mean you haven't yet? Hell no. So Elon Musk is in Doge. He got rid of some, like he did like the Reagan thing, reduce the government, make it more efficient. Yeah, get rid of these, get rid of the referee, and like shit, man. With antitrust and all that, he affected that, and other agencies that help regulate the private sector, and so he's the biggest section of the private sector, by the way, first trillionaire. And so after he leaves, remember the scene with him and the chainsaw and all that. That's what all that is, And so and then and then he became a trillionaire. And that's because some of his stocks became public and all that. But still, that's not the only reason. No, like SpaceX or whatever. No, it's because and I made a video about that. And then I had to work with ChatGPT, but I really let it tell me the facts. and it basically, we the conclusion is that because of Doge, he was able to become a trillionaire much more efficiently. you know? So, McGovern. So you look at like compare with okay, McGovern was against. So now you look at like people like comparing to the other what if presidents. So McGovern, 72, anti-war, anti-poverty, reforming American priorities. Hart, technology, modernization, new ideas. The idea about new ideas is probably the best he had to offer. New ideas can be very revolutionary. And he would have probably been the president who actually sit down and talk with Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project. That's a new idea. He Jacques Fresco is about let's redesign the infrastructure, like the cities, and it will function in a way where all these things that these far left people were always fighting for. He Jacques Fresco would have built that into the city. He would have built that into the infrastructure, and even used like automation, you know, and and then he had like he had like a city and it's kind of sectioned off from nature. You can go out in nature you want, but he would. From what I understand, if I was working for him, I would say, yeah. So, Mr. Fresco, you would have like a city here, but then you have like a bunch of acres, like 100 acres, where it's completely wild. Yeah, let the animals just be completely, and you don't get to go there and fuck around. But then there's a way to get from one city to another metropolis. Like his redesigned infrastructure so that you could live a better, fulfilling life. And there was places to go in there and like some marginal areas in the wild zones where you can go and hang out. But the idea is that he would not. Jacques Fresco was against the idea of just like developing everything where all the cities are connected, and you have like these fucking residential areas that become like eventually more commercial. Like get rid of the house and it's like and all these new cities are going to be like BTR. It's all BTR people built to rent. Jack Fresco was against all of that, so he would have like here I'm going to draw that. So basically, this is like Jacques Fresco's idea. So these represent, concentrated living space for people, and so he would redesign the infrastructure of the cities to where it would be like a freaking George McGovern slash like Larry Agran type of you know pie in the sky dream. Like so, you would be able to live your life focusing on like botany and science or music or medicine, just because you have a natural propensity towards that shit, or art, and you go to the museums, everyone entertains each other. You get to go and use things publicly, like this whole city would be one big fucking university. You remember when you were in school and you would get to take some class that you kind of wanted to take? Remember how much fun you had when you were in college? Not all of you had fun in college. A lot of you were brainwashed. Like, oh, I gotta get a major so I can make money. A lot of you people are like that, and you're gonna have more than me, but I don't want to be you. Miserable, miserable. You're the reason why we are in the place we are today. Education should never be for sale, folks. And so he was like, yeah, it's not to be made for sale. And in these cities, there's no money to be made or had. You get rid of the middleman, and it's this person and needs, the person and their needs and their desires and their wants, not desire like for robot sex, which I would have loved to have talked to him about that. Like in Japan, they're making these fucking sex bots and shit. I fucking hate that shit. You know, I just like the stuff that we could do with this technology. We're doing the worst possible things with it, which is why you got to read Philip K. Dick, and which is why you got to read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and watch the freaking movie. It's all good, and it will help you understand. And it's just we're supposed to learn from these things, people. So like that's what these are, and then in between, it's nature, it's natural, it's all wild. That's kind of like my insertion because I saw his designs, and he doesn't do this. Now this is what we're doing. So right here is like this could be like say Tucson, and this is Tempe, and that's Phoenix, and so there's still desert between some of these cities, like um, Tucson and like say Phoenix. There's a big chunk of just dry ass fucking desert, and you know what? I fucking love that. I like to fucking go out there in the middle of the desert and just like sleep under the stars, man. It's like such a trip, and I've done it. It is so grand, and they're getting rid of all that. They want to like do this to it so that you can see like the vertical horizontal lines. Um, like 90 degrees. That's how we put everything on a grid. These are all these BTR. It's all BTR between. It's BTR between. It's the BTR between Tucson and the between Tucson and Phoenix. I try to make a rap song, and I never said I was a rapper. My spit's destined for the crapper. So so that's what I mean by Hart, new ideas. Like in his project, but you would at least talk to him and help, deal with that. Probably. And so Larry Agran, 1992. So McGovern, 1972. Hart, 1988. Agran, 1992. Environmentalism, peace, dividend. Like pay dividend means like where the government puts money into that. Like, local community centered government. God, that would have been my fucking dream. Without even knowing what any of that shit was, I would just be getting like the benefits of it. I would have been more of a successful artist. I'd be more happier. Probably be married because I meet the right female. I mean, I couldn't. I'm not going to say anything about that because all I know is there's that song by the Guess Who, and it's called American Woman. Just go and play that song. All right. Agran's presidency would probably have been the most explicitly focused on redirecting national resources from military power towards domestic quality of life. Redirecting national resources. What's a resource? Is, all the natural things that you can get from the earth, and you transform it into things that you can use in order to live a better life. Without that fucking forest, you don't have shit, And so without the natural, that's why Jacques Fresco focused on it. Jacques Fresco said that we need a resource-based economy as opposed to a monetary-based economy. And let's go to Larry Agran, environmentalism, peace, dividend, local community-centered government, and then Hart, new ideas, and then McGovern, reform. Okay, anti-war, anti-poverty. All these things would be fitting right in like hand in glove to the Venus Project. At least one of these guys, especially Agran would probably go for that. So it's right here, and it says redirecting national resources from military power towards domestic quality of life. That's where like if you really wanted to give that an injection of steroids, that's your Venus Project, Jacques Fresco. So, and I'll probably repeat him again and again, but that's how I'm introducing you to this guy, Jacques Fresco. So it's so, and the reason why I do is because, and you look at Peter Joseph, who made the Zeitgeist movies. Then he's the director for Revolutionary Now, Revolution Now. I think it's Revolution Now. He's the maker of that, and he wrote many books. And I read the Cliff Notes because I'm kind of lazy. I believe me, I understand what he's talking about, and I understand what Jacques Fresco is talking about. And so, like a little thing about Peter Joseph. Well, Jacques Fresco said that he was a cybernetic engineer, and so cybernetics, Norbert Wiener, where systems, regulate themselves. Remember the analogy or the idea about how if the foot used today's economic model, the economy of the leg you would fucking lose that leg. Fuck it, you're gone. And so And I've heard the word I've heard the name Stafford Beer leave the mouth of Peter Joseph several times, and so Peter Joseph, like Jacques Fresco, is all about cybernetics, and Peter Joseph, he talks a lot about systems theory, and that's how you can create a better society, is applying these more scientific, you know, social cybernetic engineering kind of concepts, and we could have a way better world, people. And that's why I want people, like when I was teaching drawing at the colleges, I would we had a topic, regarding perspective. So naturally, I'd be like, hey, let's look at the Venus Project. Look at these weird fucking drawings that Jacques Fresco would make his own art. He was an industrial designer, architect, engineer. He was everything, man. He was a polymath. And I would say, yeah, you can draw your things like that, And oh, by the way, who's Jacques Fresco? And I would explain to the class who Jacques Fresco was. So I was kind of like getting in my point, edgewise. I really felt that I was being a real teacher when I was doing that. That's what a real teacher is supposed to do. By the way, that's what if you're a teacher, that's what you're supposed to be really doing, teaching these people to think. I was never told that Richard Nixon fudged the peace talks in '68 to become the fucking president. I was never told that in any of my classes by any of my adults. If you're an adult and you're not telling your kids this, you're a terrible parent. I don't care who in the fuck you are. You're a shitty ass fucking parent. If you can have a kid and just say, yeah, go to school and get a job, and now you're gonna rent your way, out of debt, and you're never gonna be out of fucking debt. You're gonna always be fucking poor. Unless your IQ is like 180 and you can fucking think your way out of math your way out of that shit. Ain't gonna fucking fuck it, man. I get so angry sometimes. And I never had kids. You know what? I'm proud that I never had kids. They bring them in. Okay, so why would I say that? Because we did all of this, all right? I don't think I need ChatGPT anymore for this. So it's like, let's see on my list. So we went all over all these things. So guess what? It brings us to this. This is my prediction, my first Nostradamus prediction. I bet I'm 80% chance that I'm right. I'd almost bet $100 on this. Are you ready, people? Are you ready? After all these things that we went through, I think Donald Trump is going to have a third term. Why? Because of everything that we looked at. We looked at these terms, these words, and we saw how our system works against McGovern's, Gary Hart's, and Larry Agran's, and probably Ross Perot, in there, and Ralph Nader, and then there's another one who I can't remember his name. Him as president, and Frank Zappa. I'd rather have him as president. And the reason why Donald Trump is going to be president again, if he doesn't die, or his nepotist nest of wasps, that stuff is not going away, people. It's not going away. No, it's not going away. And I know there's a big chunk of it I'm missing here, but that part's right. So, like, let's look at off the top of my head after going over this list with you. Let's look at how nature follows the path of least resistance. Well, guess what? That's how societies work. That's how institutions work. That's how government works. And all these reforms, they don't want those fucking reforms because nature follows the path of least resistance. And in a sense, we're naturally lazy. Why two if you can do it in one? It's that kind of a thing. And the word efficiency comes in. It's very Republican. Let's cut these programs because, it's not efficient for corporate profits, stock shareholder profits. And then you look at like that video I made. Please watch my stuff, man. This is okay. Anyways, just because I don't have the bells and whistles, forget the bells and whistles. I'll give you a bell, I'll give you a whistle, but not now. We'll just talk about this stuff because this is more important than the bell and the whistle. And I can't, Okay. Path of least resistance. Nature follows the path of least resistance. And we kind of have an idea how that can fall into place here with our milieu, milieu. And also things like planned obsolescence, and why things cost more. We talk about that. That ain't going away, people. Trump is gone. Your prices of shit's not going down. Your prices of shit is not going down, and the reliability of that shit is still gonna fall apart. You have to always have to buy a new car, new parts of the car, new this, new that, because of planned obsolescence. This is real. And Donald Trump didn't invent planned obsolescence. That's what invented Donald Trump. So what I'm trying to tell people is we're part of a bigger. Donald Trump's part of a bigger fucking problem. I remember, like, there's that picture, and that's why I wish I can find it, but there's like, let me see if I can find it. Hold on. They're all there to kiss Donald Trump's ass. Now look at this fucking guy. Look, I'm sorry, I'm swearing again. I promise I wouldn't. Look at these people. These people are why Donald Trump doesn't have a third term. Look at it. Look at his face. Look at that face. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at some of you voted for that. You like, look at that. You kiss that guy. Kiss that guy. Come on, man. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Yeah, you want like, ah, oh, Mark. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Just like that. Look at that. Look at that, man. Yeah. Look at that fucking pig fucker. Yeah. Shit, man. This is all up in this shit, man. This guy here, learn about what happened because of him. This guy fucking wanted a lot of death on people's heads because he wanted to be the president. He wanted to be the president. And now come on, let's talk about this. Look at this when I say this to make some of you have, give you nightmares, man. Like Donald Trump promised that, he would be like the president of no more wars. And then look what happened. All right. He's threatening to take Greenland, threatening to take Canada. He invaded Venezuela. He's suffocating. He's killing. He's paralyzing Cuba. He wants to take Cuba. Yeah, they will want to take Cuba. He wants to take Cuba. And I just heard him say that he's taking his navy, the navy that was on the Lincoln. He goes, they were not there. They're not there long enough. They're fucking having scurvy. You get fucking scurvy and shit. And it's like, and Navy seamen were jumping off board to commit suicide because they cannot stand the living conditions. These are fucking sailors are badass. Sailors and other military people, they're fucking badass. Like watch it ever. Like I'm a movies buff. Like ever watch Full Metal Jacket? That shit just blows my fucking mind. They're so badass, and if you think the Navy is any less badass, no, you're wrong, man. These people are fucking badass, and they're like, oh, I can't stand it. I'm gonna jump ship, literally jump ship, to eliminate his fucking map, man. And Donald Trump was like telling this reporter they weren't there long enough. They weren't there long enough. And he was also saying another incident where he's saying that it's gonna be we're actually gonna take the Strait of Hormuz. It's gonna become American property. We're gonna own it. Like we took Hawaii and shit, and like how we try to take Cuba. And so that's the thing. He wants to take, he's like a fucking dictator, man. He's the expansion, the imperialist kind of concept that got all communist countries all fucking shit in pants. So, hello, and that's I forgot to mention this, like, and so like he talks like a fascist. He's like threatening communists. He's always like talking communism. The Democrats are all communists, and they're the fucking enemy within and all that. So that's like that MacArthur type of mentality, that Red Scare kind of shit. That's who we got as the president. And so he promised no more wars. Not only does he make money from the wars because of his portfolio, but he used that to become president. I'm gonna stop the war in Ukraine. I'm like, no war is nowhere. Okay, now with this guy Richard Nixon, the only reason why he became president because I'm gonna put an end to the war. But unbeknownst to all of us, he purposely hijacked any chance of ending the war in '68 so that he would say that I have the solution to end the war. Dude, you fucking made it. You extended it. We had some of these other guys I mentioned, like McGovern and that. Even the fucking war have ended, a lot sooner. Anyways, God. Okay. Anyways, That's why I think Trump is going to be he's still going to be president because like these fuckers like it, and so like so the solution would be, remember isomorphs? So isomorphs are like the same but different. So you have the same outcome. Like you have like a certain kind of outcome in society. The current way society is designed is shit. So you create an isomorph, and it's like okay, so it's the needs. First of all, you got to change the needs. The needs have to go to the people and stuff like that. And so then you make an isomorph from the current system to a new system, and that would be like the Venus Project. So that's where isomorph comes in because without like without channels to bring resources to you and me in the form of things that we can use, and just to have like a better community and all that, life sucks. And so that's kind of like why I was trying to throw isomorphs in there, and nature path of least resistance, cybernetics. Using cybernetics to self-regulate these things. And unfortunately, they're using cybernetics to create all this stuff to line their pockets. So anything that's in the form of computers and AI that could ease the tension of our existence, like, and so the data centers, those things will be obsolete in a few years. Like, they're going to find better ways to make data centers. And those data centers, like the idea that the data centers provide jobs, temporary jobs. Once they build the things, you're out of a job. And then they have like 30 people maintaining each big ass data center. That's it. That's it. So like this nerdy stuff like cybernetics and stuff like that. That's why we have computers, and other smart things. And these inventions, these things are made by people that kind of have a vision, and they're supposed to help humanity, mankind, not just a select few who own, who have, capital, who are the capital owners. So that's why I had all these, you know, um, things to go over. And you see how we concluded to like this prediction that I make. This is, I really think that, the third in chief, there's an 80% chance that he's going to have a third term. And I know I'm missing some key points, and I might type it up in descriptions, or I might make a follow up. But I hope you watched all this video and really just think about this, man. And what are we gonna do about it? What are we gonna do about it? What are we gonna do about it? The Joker starts coming out. So I don't know how else to end this, but I'll just show you like a nice picture of a black kitty cat. And thank you for watching this video.